Hello dear learners, I'm Christina Georgy and I welcome you to my channel. Today's topic for discussion is stress and introduction. Dear learners, you're watching Part 3. For better understanding, please find the links of Parts 1 and 2 in the description. So now, let's move on to the sources of stress. First and foremost, frustration. Secondly, conflict of motives. Thirdly, pressure. These are the chief sources of stress. There are also a few others which include life events, daily hassles, interpersonal relations, and stress as a result of social conditions. Now, let's move on to the very first source of stress, which is frustration. According to Mangal and his studies, I quote, a wide range of environmental obstacles, both physical and social, and the internal factors in the form of personal limitations, biological conditions, and psychological barriers may lead to frustration of our needs, motives, and efforts. I unquote. Therefore, frustration can be considered as a chief source of stress. To give you a real life situation, let's take an example. Suppose you are an IT professional and you expected promotion. But unfortunately, when you hear that you haven't received the same, don't you feel like you'll experience frustration? Obviously, you will get frustrated, and this could be an imminent source of stress. Now, let's move on to the other major source of stress. Conflict of motives. What do you mean by conflict of motives? Dear learners, a conflict of motives refers to a clash between two or more motives competing with each other for satisfaction at the same time. This can cause stress as an individual has to choose alternatives, and decision making in this regard can lead to stress. Conflict of motives can be of four different types, namely approach conflict, avoidance conflict, approach-avoidance conflict, and double approach-avoidance conflict. Let's have a look at them one by one. Firstly, approach conflict. In this type of conflict, the individual has to choose between two goals that are positive and similar. For example, suppose an individual may have to choose between two similar job opportunities. That will be a tough choice, and hence this will lead to approach conflict, which will eventually cause stress in the individual. The next type of conflict of motives is avoidance conflict. Here again, there are two goals that are similar, but as opposed to approach conflict, the goals here are negative. In approach conflict, the goals were positive. I hope you remember. A very familiar example would be the situation where we'll be forced to make a decision whether to remain unemployed or to take up a mediocre job that we are not interested in. So this leads to avoidance conflict, which would further lead to stress. The next type is approach avoidance conflict. Here, there is a single goal which is both positive and negative. To give you a real life example, suppose you have got a job abroad. So obviously you will be excited about the opportunity, but at the same time you'll have to face the fact that you'll have to stay away from your family and friends. Therefore, this goal has both negative and positive consequences, and thus you might experience stress. Moving on to the last type of conflict, which is multiple approach avoidance conflict. In this type, the individual has to choose between the options that have both positive and negative consequences. How can an option have both positive and negative consequences? Let me explain this with a familiar example. Most of you must have gone through this situation, especially during your young adult age, where you must have been forced to choose between two educational opportunities. Say one of pursuing music that you're interested in, but that will make your parents unhappy because they want you to become a medical professional. So at the same time, you have another option of choosing medicine, but you are not interested in it. So such a scenario will develop multiple approach avoidance conflict, which will result in immense stress. Now let's move on to the third major source of stress, which is pressure. Pressure can be external or internal in nature. What do you mean by external pressure? These are the results of demands from the environment, responsibilities and obligations that are mainly social in nature, as well as demands and expectations of the significant persons in our lives. To give you an example, suppose you are preparing for an examination and your parents are causing you tremendous pressure. This could be an example of external pressure, that is, pressure caused by any external factor. Internal pressure comes from within. It happens when you yourself feel the need to study and to do well in examinations. Moving on to the other major sources of stress, firstly, life events. This could be the death of a loved one, divorce or separation, losing one's job, marriage, and even in this scenario, COVID-19 and so on. These could be termed as significant life events in one's life that may put pressure on the adjustment and coping resources of the person as they expose the individual to certain new and unique challenges. The next important source could be daily hassles. Similar to life events, daily hassles can also create stress. Daily hassles like lack of time, work overload, daily roles, responsibilities, etc. Stress can also be caused due to issues related to interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal relationships could be in the context of family, work, or even in peer groups. Conflicts could occur between individuals that have an impact on the interpersonal relationship. When you fight with your friends, your spouses, or any family member, you can obviously feel stressed. The social condition in which the individual exists can also lead to development of stress. These social conditions can be related to discrimination, technological developments, pollutions, and so on. Dear learners, we'll discuss more aspects on stress and its management in our upcoming videos. So stay tuned, dear learners. We'll meet again soon with interesting content. So till then, take care. Thanks for watching. Watching.